I'll take the official questions. There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete.
So here's what's really happening behind the scenes at ESPN headquarters right now. And trust me, this is bigger than most people realize. Disney executives are literally holding these urgent closed-door meetings about the WNBA. And when I say urgent, I mean the kind where lawyers are present and billion-dollar decisions are being made. You might be completely shocked by what's actually driving these conversations. There are these rumors swirling around about how one single player's treatment has created this massive corporate crisis that could permanently reshape the entire landscape of women's basketball. We're talking about the kind of crisis that keeps executives awake at night, wondering if they made a huge mistake with their investment. Why would ESPN, the biggest sports network on the planet, suddenly start questioning their multi-million-dollar commitment to women's basketball? What exactly did they discover in their internal meetings and data analysis that made them completely reevaluate everything they thought they knew about this partnership? Here's the thing that's going to surprise you. Caitlyn Clark is absolutely central to the solution they're considering, but it's not in the way you might expect or hope. This whole situation has absolutely nothing to do with her incredible performance on the court, her record-breaking stats, or her undeniable talent as a basketball player. What's happening off the court, in boardrooms and behind closed doors, is what's causing these billion-dollar businessmen to lose sleep and question everything. What exactly are they seeing in their private reports and internal discussions that the general public isn't privy to? Why are multiple sources claiming that ESPN executives are genuinely taken aback and frustrated by the very league they invested so heavily in? And here's the real question that absolutely no one in the mainstream media is asking. And it's the most important one of all. What happens when the corporation that essentially controls sports media decides they've had enough and are ready to walk away? The truth about what's really happening is so complex and multi-layered that no single news report or analysis can fully capture the magnitude of what's at stake here. The WNBA's ability to survive and thrive over the next 5 years might completely depend on the decisions that are made in the coming weeks and months. Let me break down what's actually happening behind these closed doors, because this isn't just another sports drama or media controversy anymore. This is pure business. And we're talking about the kind of high-stakes business where billions of dollars are on the line. When billion-dollar corporations start losing patience with their investments, real consequences follow. People lose their jobs, entire leagues lose their funding, and players lose their paychecks and career opportunities. Let's dive deep into the specifics of what's really going on in those executive boardrooms, why ESPN is reportedly done playing nice and being diplomatic, and what this could mean for the entire future of the WNBA as we know it. Let me take you back and explain exactly why ESPN even cares about the WNBA in the first place. Because the context here is absolutely crucial to understanding the current crisis. Let's be brutally honest about the reality of the situation. WNBA ratings were absolutely terrible before Caitlyn Clark entered the league. I'm not trying to be harsh, but the numbers don't lie, and executives live and die by those numbers. Viewership was consistently low, games were being aired on obscure channels that most people didn't even know existed, and the average casual sports fan wasn't paying any attention whatsoever to women's basketball. Then everything changed overnight when Caitlyn Clark got drafted. And I mean everything. Suddenly, games featuring Caitlyn Clark are pulling in millions of viewers, which is absolutely unprecedented for the WNBA. Indiana Fever games started breaking viewership records that hadn't been touched in years, and her debut performances became must-watch television that had people setting reminders and clearing their schedule. All of a sudden, fans who had never given the WNBA a second thought were filling up arenas, buying jerseys and merchandise, and genuinely getting excited about women's basketball. ESPN executives took notice of this phenomenon immediately, and you can bet they were paying very close attention to every metric and data point. They watched the ratings spike dramatically. They saw social media engagement explode across all platforms, and they witnessed merchandise flying off the shelves at a pace nobody had expected. Their conclusion was simple and logical. This is exactly what we invested our money for. This is the return we were hoping to see. But here's where the story gets really interesting and where the current problems started to emerge. When Caitlyn Clark isn't playing or isn't the featured storyline, those ratings absolutely crash back down to earth. We're talking about viewership drops of 60 to 70% when she's not on the court, which is a staggering difference that you can't ignore if you're running a business. Games without Caitlyn, are basically back to those pre-2024 numbers that nobody was watching. The same numbers that made the WNBA a tough sell for advertisers and sponsors. Now put yourself in the shoes of an ESPN executive for a moment, and think about how frustrating this must be. You just invested millions of dollars in television rights for a league that apparently only draws viewers because of one single player. You're watching that same league treat their biggest star like she's completely replaceable and disposable. You're seeing other players make disrespectful comments about her in interviews and on social media. You're witnessing referees consistently overlook blatant fouls and dangerous plays when she's being targeted. You're watching the commissioner stay completely silent while Caitlyn is being physically and verbally targeted game after game, week after week. Would you be satisfied with that investment? According to multiple insiders who have knowledge of these internal discussions, ESPN exec teams are absolutely not happy with what they're seeing. They're frustrated because they didn't pay millions of dollars for a struggling league with inconsistent ratings and poor management. They paid for the Caitlyn Clark effect and everything that comes with it. If the WNBA can't protect her, promote her properly, or worse yet, if they somehow lose her entirely, then what exactly did ESPN pay for? Now let's talk about the actual incidents that are happening on the court. Because this goes way beyond just business considerations and profit margins. This is about a player who is being systematically targeted, disrespected, and put in physical danger, while the league's leadership does absolutely nothing to address it. Fans have documented every single incident with video evidence that's impossible to deny. The hard fouls that cross the line, the elbows to the face, the aggressive trash talk that goes way beyond normal competition. And what does the WNBA do in response? Absolutely nothing meaningful. The commissioner makes these vague, generic statements about maintaining the integrity of the game, but never directly addresses the obvious elephant in the room. Caitlyn Clark is being treated differently than other players, and it's happening consistently enough that it can't be dismissed as coincidence. ESPN executives have reportedly been closely monitoring these incidents, and they've seen all the viral clips of Caitlyn getting knocked to the ground with no foul being called. They've watched the post-game interviews where she has to stay diplomatic and professional, while everyone knows she just got deliberately targeted by opponents who face no consequences. They've seen the welcome to the league narratives being pushed by analysts and commentators who should be calling out unsafe play instead of normalizing it. Here's what ESPN executives understand that the WNBA leadership doesn't seem to grasp. Caitlyn Clark isn't just another player on the roster. She is literally the product they invested in. She's the primary reason casual fans are tuning in to games. She's the reason major sponsors are calling with interest. She's the reason the WNBA is even part of mainstream sports conversations right now. But imagine this scenario that's keeping ESPN executives up at night. What if Caitlyn gets seriously injured because of a dirty play that officials failed to call? What if she has to miss half a season recovering from an injury that could have been prevented? What if she becomes so frustrated with the treatment and lack of protection that she starts considering other career options, like overseas leagues or early retirement? These are the scenarios that insiders say ESPN is actively considering. And they're genuinely worried about the business implications, because here's the harsh reality. What happens to those record-breaking ratings if Caitlyn Clark gets hurt or decides to leave the league entirely? What happens to that multi-million-dollar investment that ESPN made based on her star power and drawing ability? The answer is straightforward and terrifying for everyone involved. It completely tanks, and we're talking about a collapse that would be devastating for the entire league. Sources with direct knowledge of internal discussions say ESPN has already started running projections and worst-case scenario analyses. They're looking at data models that show what WNBA viewership would look like without Caitlyn Clark, and the numbers are absolutely devastating. We're talking about potentially returning to those pre-2024 levels, which might actually be worse now because the league has been given this massive spotlight and opportunity that they could be seen as having wasted. Casual fans gave the WNBA a genuine chance specifically because of Caitlyn Clark and the excitement she brought toward the game. If she were gone tomorrow, why would those same casual fans continue watching? They came for her, and they'd likely leave with her, leaving the league in a worse position than where it started. This is where the real corporate conflict is brewing, and it's getting more intense by the week. ESPN executives are reportedly asking the question that the WNBA commissioner should have been asking from day one. Why are we allowing the destruction of our only truly valuable asset? And according to sources, they're not getting satisfactory answers from league leadership, which is creating serious tension in what should be a partnership. There have reportedly been some very tense conversations between ESPN representatives and WNBA officials. And these aren't friendly partnership meetings anymore. We're talking about the kind of discussions where lawyers are present, and terms like breach of contract and failure to protect the investment are being thrown around. These are serious business conversations about serious money, and the relationship is becoming increasingly strained. Here's what a lot of people don't understand about ESPN's deal with the WNBA. It's not just about broadcasting any games that happen to be scheduled. It's specifically about broadcasting valuable games that people actually want to watch. Games that justify ESPN's advertising rates and programming decisions. Games that deliver on the audience numbers that were promised to sponsors and advertisers. If the league's biggest star gets injured, sidelined, or driven out of the league entirely, ESPN could legitimately argue that the WNBA isn't holding up their end of the bargain. Sources suggest this is exactly the direction these conversations are heading, and it's creating a lot of anxiety on both sides. ESPN didn't invest all that money in a self-destructive league that can't manage its most important assets. They invested in the Caitlyn Clark phenomenon and the ratings boost that came with it. If they're not getting what they paid for, they have options. And some of those options could be absolutely devastating for the WNBA's future. So what happens if ESPN decides they've had enough and want out of this partnership? What does the nuclear option actually look like? The most extreme scenario would be them terminating the broadcasting agreement entirely. Now, obviously, this isn't simple or straightforward. There are lawyers involved, complex negotiations, and these contracts have all sorts of clauses, provisions, and legal protections built in. But here's the reality of dealing with Disney, one of the most powerful media corporations in the world. When they want out of something, they find a way out. Their legal teams are among the best in the business, and they have resources that most organizations simply can't match. Sources indicate that they're currently exploring all of their options and contingency plans, which should be a wake-up call for WNBA leadership. Imagine if the WNBA woke up tomorrow morning to this headline splashed across every sports media outlet. ETWing to terminate WNBA broadcasting deal amid concerns over league management. What would happen next would be an absolute catastrophe for women's professional basketball. First, the money stops flowing immediately. The WNBA's current television contract with ESPN is reportedly worth approximately $200 million spread over multiple years. That money funds absolutely everything. Player salaries, travel expenses, facilities, marketing campaigns, and basic league operations. Without that massive check from ESPN, the league would face immediate and severe financial difficulties that could threaten its very existence. Second, other sponsors would panic and start reevaluating their own investments in the league. If ESPN, the biggest name in sports media, is walking away, what does that say about the league's future prospects and management capabilities? Suddenly, other companies would start questioning their sponsorship deals and marketing partnerships. Merchandise sales would slow down as consumer confidence drops. Ticket sales would decline because fans would start believing the league is failing and might not be around much longer. Third, and this is the most heartbreaking part, the players themselves would suffer the consequences. When the funding stops coming in, salaries get reduced or eliminated entirely. Benefits disappear. The dream of a sustainable long-term professional women's basketball league in America goes back to being just that, a dream instead of a reality. The most frustrating part of this entire situation is that it's completely avoidable and preventable. The WNBA could have protected Caitlyn Clark from day one. They could have addressed the targeting and dangerous play immediately and decisively. They could have made it crystal clear that unsafe play and deliberate attempts to injure star players would not be tolerated under any circumstances. They could have valued and protected the player who single-handedly saved their league from obscurity and irrelevance. But they chose not to do any of those things. And now everyone might pay the price for that poor leadership and short-sighted decision-making. ESPN executives reportedly feel deceived and betrayed by the situation. They made a substantial investment in good faith, expecting that the WNBA would handle their business professionally and protect their most valuable assets. Instead, they're watching a league implode from within, while the commissioner pretends everything is fine and refuses to acknowledge the obvious problems. According to sources close to the situation, ESPN has already started developing contingency plans for their programming schedule. Without the WNBA, they're exploring how they would fill those time slots with other content, whether that's college basketball, international women's leagues, or completely different sports programming. The answer is yes, they absolutely could replace WNBA programming without significant difficulty. But here's the problem for the WNBA. They can't just go out and find another ESPN. There aren't multiple billion-dollar networks lining up to broadcast women's basketball, especially after seeing how this situation has been handled. ESPN was their lifeline, their connection to mainstream audiences, and major advertising dollars. If ESPN walks away, the league might not survive in any recognizable form. Let's talk about what the future could look like if these insider predictions come true. Because there are several possible scenarios, and none of them are particularly good for the WNBA as currently structured. Scenario 1 is that ESPN stays but demands major changes and reforms. In this case, ESPN uses the threat of leaving as leverage to force the WNBA to address their concerns. They would demand that the commissioner take player safety seriously, especially when it comes to protecting Caitlyn Clark. They would insist on changes to how games are officiated and how disciplinary actions are handled. They would require transparency about how the league plans to build around and promote their biggest stars. The WNBA, realizing they can't survive without ESPN's money and platform, would be forced to comply with these demands. Rules would actually get enforced consistently. Players who engage in dirty play would face real suspensions and consequences. The league would make it absolutely clear that targeting star players will not be tolerated under any circumstances. This is probably the best-case scenario for everyone involved, but it requires the WNBA leadership to admit they made serious mistakes and commit to doing better. Based on how the commissioner has handled things so far, that level of accountability and change doesn't seem likely. Scenario 2 is that ESPN reduces their investment and commitment significantly, instead of walking away completely. Maybe ESPN renegotiates the deal on much less favorable terms for the WNBA. They pay substantially less money for the rights. They broadcast fewer games overall. They move games to less prominent channels and time slots. The WNBA would survive in this scenario, but in a severely diminished state compared to what they could have achieved. Player salaries would go down. The growth momentum would stop completely. The league would return to being a niche sport that struggles for attention and relevance, just like it was before Caitlyn Clark arrived and changed everything. Scenario 3 is the worst-case scenario. ESPN walks away entirely, and the WNBA collapses. While this seems extreme, sources suggest it's not impossible given the current trajectory. ESPN pulls out of their contract. No other major network steps up with a comparable offer. Sponsors start abandoning their partnerships. Teams begin folding due to financial pressures. The league either shuts down completely or shrinks dramatically, potentially down to just a few teams in major markets. The saddest part is that all of this devastation would have been completely preventable if the WNBA had just protected their most valuable asset from the beginning. Here's the bottom line that everyone needs to understand. ESPN is a business, and Disney is a business. Their investment in the WNBA wasn't charity or corporate social responsibility. They invested because they saw a legitimate opportunity to make money and attract audiences. That opportunity has a name, and it's Caitlyn Clark. If the WNBA can't protect her, can't promote her effectively, and can't build a sustainable product around her star power, then ESPN has absolutely zero business reason to continue their investment. The ratings and statistics don't lie. Without Caitlyn, there would be no major investment, no mainstream attention, and no financial viability. Sources say time is running out for the WNBA to get their act together. ESPN executives are watching every game, every incident, every poor decision by league leadership. The commissioner needs to understand that virtue signaling and generic press releases won't save the league when the money stops flowing. There's only one thing that will save the WNBA at this point: protecting their golden goose. Because if Caitlyn Clark gets hurt, gets driven out, or decides to leave, the WNBA won't just lose a player. They'll lose absolutely everything. The investment, the attention, the growth, the dream of sustainable professional women's basketball in America. When the checks stop clearing and the lights go out, the dream dies with them. The choice is really that simple and stark. Protect Caitlyn Clark and build around her success, or watch the entire league collapse under the weight of its own poor decisions and leadership failures. What do you think is going to happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on everything related to Caitlyn Clark and the WNBA. Because this story is far from over. As all these high-stakes conversations continue behind closed doors, and the pressure around the league keeps building to unprecedented levels, one thing is becoming clearer and more obvious than ever before. The future of women's professional basketball is standing at an absolutely critical crossroads that will determine everything about what comes next. Whether we're talking about rising television ratings, massive corporate expectations, or the growing national spotlight on athlete safety and league management, this moment represents something much bigger than just one network's relationship with one player. This is a fundamental test of leadership at the highest levels, a test of what the league's true priorities actually are. and a test of whether the WNBA is ready and willing to evolve in a way that protects its biggest stars and preserves the incredible momentum that Caitlyn Clark created almost single-handedly. Whatever decisions get made in the next few weeks and months, they will absolutely shape the direction and future of the WNBA for many years to come. And the stakes couldn't be higher for everyone involved. So if you want every update, every new development, every twist and turn, and every behind-the-scenes revelation, as this massive story continues to unfold and develop, make sure you're completely locked in and following along. Like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts on what's going to happen, and subscribe to stay on top of everything, because this conversation isn't slowing down anytime soon. And trust me when I say you absolutely don't want to miss what happens next in this incredible saga.